You didn't have the mic on.
We did not have our microphone.
We've gone 13 minutes and there was no sound whatsoever.
Oh my goodness. I saw somebody waving here at us and I just realized there was no sound. No sound.
So, where were we?
Where were we? We were just talking about how life in North America started. So okay. Well, that's one little thing we neglected to turn on today, which was the sound. Thank you, everyone who was trying to help us out here. So we were talking about how the 13 colonies in the U.S. started by the need for food to be provided for people. And we were talking about how the king of England was taxing the people who were laboring and producing the food here. And and then we went on to talking about the fact that if you look at your paycheck, there's a chunk of it missing. So the reason the American Revolution happened was really mainly because of the taxation, which at the time was 2%. We were just chatting about the fact that in Canada, our basic tax as you do purchases is 13, but there's so much more.
8 on GST and 5 on PST.
You were just spending time doing math and calculating GST, which is
general sales tax,
goods and service tax,
and PST is the provincial tax we get here. So
provincial
there's
sales tax. So then you get your HST and
right.
Why do I have to calculate?
So not only are we being taxed, but then we are spending math class learning how to calculate that. And so anyway, my little story was that my brother's friend I was just recently talking to when he was in his 20s, and he came when he came to Canada, got his first job here, and he was so excited because they promised him a certain amount of money per hour, and he looked at his pay stub, and he had to go to HR and ask them where the rest of his money went. So, and they said, well, this is how we work here in North America. So, that was just something that is historically being passed on.
It's stealing our money.
Right. And so what we were chatting just now, the way we started the show is we were talking about the fact that history is really driven by fulfilling our needs. Mm-hmm. And so that is why during today's show, we wanted to, and we've mentioned this before, but we wanted to re-examine the whole concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because we as families need to understand how to take care of those needs, but then how to reach that self-actualization that is really the purpose why we have life, why God's given us life. We all have a purpose. And so we were chatting also earlier that when Yossi asked me, so what is self-actualization? It really, the definition was fulfilling your purpose, your destiny, and your potential that God's put in you.
Why look at me? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, we learned together because we're a homeschool family. We had to look it up together. Mm-hmm. And today, actually, we started a book in our pod, and we've done this before. This is more of a review. Well, we really started talking about something that we've talked about before. And I'm going to just kind of show it here in the camera. It's My Circle of Control. And I do have a website in the background there, which is really, this is a tool, that Circle of Control tool is how to deal with stressful situations. Because one thing in School Pods Canada, we realize is that children have not really been taught the circle. What is the circle of control? What can we do in situations that are stressful to us? And so the purpose of that tool, the reason it was developed is because when we need to deal with stressful situation, we need to remember to take care of ourselves. We need to also be concerned about how we behave Actually, I do need it a little bit bigger, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So also we can control how we work. Oh, that's probably a little bit better.
There we go.
Thank you. Maybe in the audience can read it better. And then setting goals and how to achieve our goals and not giving up when there's difficulties along the way. So what can we control in the whole process? What are we responsible for? And then setting boundaries and protecting our peace is another area of control that we have, and deciding what you prioritize. So deciding on priorities for ourselves. If we do not learn these things that we just listed, then this is how we'll end up. If we do not do these things, we'll end up having somebody else set those for us. This is how we'll get the government to do this for us, how we'll get society to do that for us.
Exactly.
The person next to us, those the what is it, invasive species that you were talking about. Well, it's and if someone is a billionaire, that does not have to be a bad thing if they use their resources for good. But it's those who use their resources to help themselves and really harm others,
which is still a big chunk of them.
That would be a parasitic kind of invasive species kind of role. That and so when we get hold of what we can control and what really our purpose is in this life, is when we are going to be able to make this world a better place. Because if we focus on making ours, and I just want to caution with that circle of control, we want to make sure that we don't take care of ourselves only and not not care for the world outside. But the circle of control, the purpose of that is really to deal with situations where we need to show resilience. Okay, can we scroll that a little bit, because there is a little bit more.
So you have to go to the
Yes.
scroll down.
Yeah, let's go on the screen.
Okay.
So let's go to the circle itself, that visual. Okay. And so initially, the simpler version is what I can control, what I cannot control. But then, as we were discussing today, we were discussing some scenarios in our pod. Is there some situations that we cannot control, but we can influence? So that little circle of influence was added on to the circle of control. And we start with silly little things like, can you control whether you wave to your friend, say hello to your friend or not? Right? We know that we can control that. What we have for lunch. So we discussed that. And that was actually an interesting one we chatted about. Are you in control of what you can have for lunch? Right. And so we said, well, if you're taking care of lunch, you're in control of it. Mm-hmm. If somebody else is taking care of lunch,
that's just an influence.
Then you can say what you want, but somebody else controls that.
Yeah, you could seriously do some grilled cheese.
And really, so this is actually the website that this graphic is found on is called Mental Health Life Center for kids.com. And so there's all kinds of tools. So for educators, for parents, and anyone who wants to help in teaching young people, I believe that's a wonderful website. And so and we're not going to scroll further through this article, but one of the things that it speaks about is the fact that you can expand your circle of control. So the more responsibility you take for things, then you're in control of more things. And the more you kind of sit there and wait others to do things for you, then you're kind of shrinking your circle of control. And so we have to really also become the kind of people where our circle of influence grows, where we can influence decisions, important decisions that we can't necessarily directly control, but as we work in society, we can do those. So there were these are just the simple but examples that we discussed today. But every time as a family, when you have to face a difficult situation, I would advise families members, every individual, to take that circle of control graphic and really think about what is it that they can do about the situation and what is it that they cannot do. Now, what do we do with the area though where is it's kind of like circle of concern, but it's not necessarily a control, like it's something that we can control? What can we do with that? We watched the video today. What were a couple of things that they advised that you can do about the things you cannot control? Do you remember that? I'm quizzing my son on
I don't know. It was
on the
like,
show.
it was like an hour or two
So
ago.
one of the things was acceptance. Sometimes we have to understand, you know what, I cannot control this, so accept the fact that I'm not going to. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean to become passive. That just means not to be anxious about things you can do nothing about and take that load upon, because sitting up at night and not being able to sleep because we worry about things we can do nothing about, it's kind of not very productive.
You're just
Well,
worried.
and you now have statistics that say that especially younger people are suffering from anxiety and depression more so than ever because we've been constantly bombarded by the media over the past 5, 10 years about our good friend Greta Thunberg. Oh, the world is going to end, and every prediction she's ever made has been wrong. But now you've got these lunatics that are throwing soup cans at art masterpieces in order to stop oil and stuff like that. And so people are losing their ration. You're not going to stop the oil industry.
Well, and I was gonna say, so with that, you may give yourself a sense that you're doing something about the issue. You can do something about it, but is it really doing anything about it? Is it positive? Is it something that is really helping anybody? No, it's not. It's actually now they're having to have extra security around those art pieces. And
What did the Mona Lisa ever do to the environment?
well, I mean, but how, like, it's one is not connected to the other. You have to make sure that if you are going to do something about something, it's going to be directly.
or now they're sitting in the middle of the road blocking traffic so that cars are stuck and they're idling, in fact, using more gas.
Right. So, yeah, we need to also use logic when we are
But this is the
in these
problem is
situations.
that when you get to the outer circle there and you're anxious about it, then you do things that are usually counterproductive in order to give yourself the impression that you're doing something. And the reality is you're not. And so it goes back to, well, what can you focus on? What can you control? Or what can you influence? Now, the corollary to this, the kind of the opposite is that there are things that we can control that often we think we can't. And what that does
Yeah.
is it makes us a victim. And so
Yeah.
I once heard an audio one time where the guy said, if something goes wrong and, people would say, well, it's not my fault. And then he said, well, don't you want it to be your fault? Because if it's your fault, then you can do something about it. You can change that.
Yeah.
If it's someone else's fault, then there's nothing you can do about it. And what that does is it makes you a victim.
Yeah.
And too much of a society is walking around. I mean, now you've got United States, they've got reparations committees because, we're now supposed to compensate people for slavery that happened 160 years ago or something like that.
Well, and this is what we're talking about. Like, if you want to shrink your circle of control, then make it somebody else's responsibility to take care of things in your
And
life.
someone will be more than happy to do that for you. Usually, first name starting with G.
Well, because if your
Government.
circle of control shrinks, the government circle of control
That's right.
increases. And, we have to think about that as we are part of society. We don't exist as individuals. It's like these circles, if our circle grows, then somebody's is going to shrink and the other way around. So we have to really make those decisions with sound mind, as the Bible says, have a sound mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what I wanted to talk about, because part of us reaching self-fulfillment, we have to really understand what is it that we can do and what is it that we cannot do. definitely a useful tool. And really, what this is, so what are some things that we can be concerned about, but we are not in control of? And that's the weather, people's health, what is what is
Or climate change.
war, yeah, politics, climate change, violence, school shootings. Now, these are big issues, and these are things we can't as an individual change, but we can influence, and we can well, this is why we're doing the show, because if we have healthier society, those things will be less of a concern, you know.
Yes.
And if
Indeed.
each individual is actually focused on their circle of control and influence, then taking active role, then we won't have a big circle of things we cannot control. So what can we influence? Work relationships, family relationships, like just relationships and behaviors of people. We can influence them, because if we are positive, we will be influenced around us, a positive influence. If we're negative, that is just something as being an example. And what can we control? Well, control has to do with us. So the self-care practice, because we have to take care of ourselves. How many of us get grumpy when we are sick? And then, we're not really nice to be around. Personal goals. Those are things we can set ourselves and make sure, hold ourselves accountable. I mean, if you want to have accountability partner, that's fine, because asking for help is one of those things within your circle of control.
Sure.
And then the boundaries that we set with people, the priorities we set for our lives, and how to respond to others, and even our thoughts. People say, well, I'm a human being, I have feelings. Good. You should have those feelings. They're indicators for you to start thinking, what is the problem? What can I do about the problem? And we've been also talking with people about the fact that we need to go to people who can actually help us, because if we go to people about a problem that concerns somebody else, then we end up doing a gossip session rather than problem solving session. And so that is not, we might have a sense of control if we go and talk about that person, but we don't. We haven't changed anything.
Well, and actually, this is something that happened to me a couple of months ago, where I did something that someone was unhappy about.
Yeah.
And when I tried reaching out to this person, instead of talking to me, he went and talked to someone else who wasn't involved in the situation whatsoever, and spent the time, whatever the amount of that conversation was, complaining. And so when I finally did get a chance to speak to him the next day, I said, well, why would you even do that?
Yeah.
The people that you talked to had absolutely nothing to do with this. And so all you did was gossip about me.
Right. And that goes back to, and I know you spoke to that person about the fact that it all goes back to the golden rule in the Bible, which is treat others the way you want to be treated.
Exactly.
And so having concern, we can have concern for others, but then we have to control how we do that. And so why am I introducing this before I even introduce Maslow's hierarchy of needs is because using our circle of control tool here, we can improve our mental health. Okay. So we can feel more in control of our lives, and we can stop sharing that because I'm just summarizing it right now. We can become more proactive. How many people do we know that are reactive? Like, we can see things happening, things coming their way, or we can see things coming our way. And we have to choose to be proactive rather than reactive. Okay. And so these are things, in order for us to have that sound mind, we have to use this knowledge and understanding of how to even set up our mind in order for us to deal with difficulties in life and stressful situations. What is one stressful situation that's coming up in your life, Yossi, that you said, I'm a little bit nervous about this? Yossi's going to have his bar mitzvah not long from, like, next month. And what part of that is making you nervous? Having to do Torah reading. So learning a new language like Hebrew. We don't speak Hebrew at home, but we know some Hebrew. And but it's still, you're not comfortable enough to be reading a whole Torah passage, right, in Hebrew. And so, and that's partially because of that, I introduced our the circle of control. So what can you do? Okay, let's talk about that stressful situation. What can you control about that situation, about your bar mitzvah and the Torah reading? You can study. How often do you need to? Yeah, practice every day. What are some things you can tell yourself it's going to be okay? Breathe. We talked about to slow down your breathing. If you get nervous about something and your breathing starts going faster, I have to remind that myself.
It's a beautiful 7-letter word that we all forget sometimes.
Right. So, what can you not control?
You should get a paper bag with your name on it.
Yeah. All right. So, what are some things you cannot control about your bar mitzvah that might happen?
Me messing up.
Yeah, making a mistake. It's not going to be the end of the world, right? I think just about everybody who's had their bar mitzvah has made some mistake in their reading. Maybe you didn't when you were younger. Don't remember too long.
I don't think I did. But I mean, I practiced for 9 months on that thing. I had weekly lessons. I mean, it was.
So that's the thing. Scheduling your time, being proactive so you can spend that time. So the more we do the things that we can control, then the fewer things are left that we cannot control and less concern is left there. So because if you feel more confident because of practice, then messing up won't be as much of an issue and concern, right? So that's kind of, I just kind of wanted to go over that because it's a good illustration that we're talking about.
Yes, and one of the other things you can control is the making sure that you're not going to be anxious by telling yourself that you're going to do a great job. Self-talk, and I think we should probably do a
show. It's coming up.
Another show on this. Doing self-talk is so important because when you study there was a book that was written, it's on my shelf actually, it's called The Ant and the Elephant. And it is a what type of story is it? It's
allegory.
Yes, an allegory. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Of I finished the coffee a long time ago, so it's lucky if I remember my name or your name right now. But it's an allegory about the conscious versus the subconscious mind. And I think we've discussed this before, but the subconscious mind has 2 million times more neurons that are active in every second than the conscious mind. And yet most people are trying to live their life through their conscious mind. So they're ignoring the subconscious mind. And the thing about the subconscious mind, and the reason why there's so many more neurons that are active is because it works in images and pictures and things like that, whereas the conscious mind simply works through words. So there's a lot less space and processing that's needed. But the subconscious mind does not understand the difference between truth and fiction. It has no way of filtering things. It only knows what has been fed. And so that's why advertising is so powerful, is because if we get the same message over and over and over again, the subconscious mind is going to believe it. And because it's so much bigger, it's 2 million times bigger than the conscious mind, it is going to win. Every time. So if you believe even if it's not true, if I believe that, something, Coke is better than Pepsi because that's what the commercial tells me, it may not be true. As a matter of fact, neither of them are any good. But, you might have a preference. I know in my house, we had a preference. My mother was a Pepsi fan growing up. And we did not drink Coke in my house because that was her preference.
Yeah.
So, we are taught as kids that was the better one. Well, it may be true, it may not be true. So advertising is very, very powerful, and they have mastered the art of imaging what it is that they want us to believe because the subconscious mind will pick it up. That's why pharmaceutical companies, when they advertise, they show pictures of, this wonderful life that you're living and you're on the beach somewhere. And meantime, when you get the disclaimer at the end, with all of the side effects that this medication, that your head is going to blow up 15 minutes after you take this, and shortly after that your left knee is going to fall off. But they say it in a monotone voice right at the very end. your subconscious mind isn't even picking that up. All it's doing is watching the beach scene where if I take this medication, I'm going to feel really good.
Right. And so we will, I think we'll expand more on that in a future show. So I wanted to go to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And just I'm going to quickly just read what is it, because we've mentioned it before many times. We will share in a moment. Yes, we will. So the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is a motivational theory in psychology comparing the 5-tier model of human needs, often depicted as hierarchical levels within a pyramid. But we'll talk about the fact that it doesn't necessarily, they don't come in the same order in our lives. And we can experience the needs in all of the categories at the same time. The 5 levels of the hierarchy are psychological, safety needs, love and belonging needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. And that was kind of what we were kind of trying to study. And how do we reach that potential? Lower level basic needs like food, water, and safety must be met first before higher needs can be fulfilled. So no matter how driven we are, if we are starving, if we are not safe, our brain's going to switch into survival mode, and we'll have difficulty thinking anything beyond that, right?
Yep.
But once those needs are fulfilled, then we are free to move on to the next level. Few people are believed to have reached. So Maslow himself did not believe that people in general can achieve that self-actualization, the peak of the pyramid. So he believes only few people have reached that self-actualization, fulfilled their potential. But we can all, but he believed that we all have had moments of peak experiences when you've done something beyond what you believed it was possible for you. And the order of the levels is not completely fixed. So some, it's like esteem might outweigh love. So some people need more strongly, and that goes back to the personalities. Some people might feel more strongly the need to feel good about themselves than be loved by others, depending on whether they're extroverts or introverts, right? While others may self-actualize despite poverty. So we love reading about these biographies and stories where people have overcome the odds and their circumstances, and they've been a success story, an example to people in history. And our behaviors are usually motivated by multiple needs simultaneously. It's good to have many motivators, and we also could talk another show about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And applications include workplace motivation, education, counseling, and nursing. So let us then share. Could you share for us, Yossi? He's our actually, yes, Maslow right there. Yeah, we do need to share that, but I think we do need to go to the bottom. So no, go like, yeah, right there. We want to start at the bottom because, like we talked about, we do need to have that. Oh, okay, that's where you are. All right, good. We can show that to everybody now. So we're starting with the psychological needs, which is like breathing. So we all, and a lot of success speakers, motivational speakers talk about, we all say that we don't need money and money's like oxygen. We don't really think about it when it's around, when we have abundance of it, but we actually start focusing on it when we start lacking it. If you have lack of oxygen in a room, you start feeling it, and then it becomes a little bit more of a focus.
You become very aware of it.
Yeah. And so breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. We all know that it's very difficult to have higher thinking when you're sleep deprived, example, new parents. People, you feel like you basically can do basic functions during that time.
We've had baby brain for almost 14 years now.
Well, that's just tiredness of life, but so the physiological needs are the basic needs, and then we move on to safety and security. So once we have food, once we have everything taken care of, that we kind of stop focusing on it, and we almost we free up brain space to move on to the next thought process, which is, then we can think about our health, um, it- um, our employment. What career do we want to choose? Property we want to own, family and social ability, and relationships.
Mhm.
Um, we all want to have these things. I mean, I know one of my favorite channels is HGTV because I love having a home. And I've been thinking, like, people ask me, why is it? Like, why is it that you like that? And, you know, just recently occurred to me, it's because as a child, I moved from home to home to home. Maybe that's why I'm so interested in homes and how to put homes together. And wherever I go, I want to make it a home,
Mhm.
a place where I can feel safe and secure. It's my place.
Yeah.
Now I have learned though to be flexible and make a home wherever I go, right? So I'm not stuck in one place, but it's a bit of a focus.
Yeah.
The next level is love and belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, sense of connection. So not only do we want to feel secure that we have these things, but now we want something more out of our friendships. We don't want to have just 500 friends on Facebook. We want to actually have friends that we can live life
You can
with.
have that many?
You could have a lot
yeah.
of friends on Facebook,
I
but
think you have about a limit of 5,000 or something like
but that is kind of like the safety and security when you have so many people, following on Facebook or whatever social media you're on. That is not the same as the love and belonging stage, because how much love and belonging do you feel from people who are just kind of on your screen?
Yeah.
Like, so when we talk about love and belonging and the friendships and relationship, this is more um a deeper, now more meaningful relationships. And then we moving on to self-esteem, which is the where we gain confidence. When we start learning things, when we start feeling secure that, hey, we can feel, we can keep relationships, we can keep employment, we can do things. Then we start gaining confidence. The more, like, you start gaining confidence, the more you're practicing your parsha for your bar mitzvah. You're
Mhm.
halfway there. You're
We're
pretty.
halfway there. Ah!
So
Please don't say.
no. Now, for half of it, you're already feeling confident. So we're good. Achievement. When we overcome our fears and we do things and we do them successfully, we have a sense of achievement.
One more verse.
Respect of others. Okay. For us, it's not only important to be in a relationship with others, but now there's this need for respect, for others to respect us, to feel like we matter, that what we do matters and it's appreciated, the need to be a unique individual. So far, it's been, the first three levels are levels where we're kind of like fitting into society, like they're common with everybody else. But now being an individual, and I know somewhere in the article here where this graphic came from, it says it is not trying to be an individual purposefully to go against society, but it's just gaining that individualism by being aware of what your gifting is and how you can contribute to the society. So we have to be very careful about this, because when we talk about self, that doesn't mean to put ourselves first. And the Bible says we are to esteem one another above ourselves.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, self-esteem, I think, is not a very good thing to be achieving. Self-respect is something that we want to gain, and self-respect is obtained by doing the right thing.
Right.
Self-esteem can be, well, I feel good about myself because,
I see myself in a good way. I feel
Yeah.
good about myself.
Yeah, and it's just simply, I changed the way that I talk. That doesn't mean your habits have changed. That doesn't mean, before I used to lay around and not do anything in housework, and I used to feel bad about it. But now I'm okay with it because, I just need to accept who I am. That's where
Right.
but self-respect will come from doing the right thing.
Right. And feeling like you are actually useful and helpful member of society,
exactly.
and you have a unique purpose. That's where uniqueness comes from. I have a unique purpose for the community or the society I'm in.
Mhm.
And then we're going on to self-actualization, so that the morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, and inner potential. So that is now people who stand out reach um, that level. I think we all have the potential of reaching that level, and it really depends on all the other tools that we're teaching. How the growth mindset.
Mhm.
How much we worry about things that we control, and so self actualization can be reached despite poverty. And there are many, people say Mother Teresa, like all these people who have actually denied some of those needs, right?
Mhm.
In order for them to dedicate themselves to that. So, and you can experience need in any of those level at any time. Just because you're poor, or just because, I don't know, you don't have an employment, doesn't mean you can't be self actualized. Because, and as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, in Eastern Europe during communism, and I've just been talking to people about this, we, towards the end of communism, like in the late 80s, our stores became kind of empty and we didn't have
Mhm.
much food. But guess what happened? More of us started thinking, hey, wait a minute, I don't need to rely on the government to get me food. I can grow my own food. I
Mhm.
can I can learn how to do this. People were forming co-ops amongst each other outside
Yep.
of the government system,
Yep.
and they were exchanging goods and services to one another. And so this way, we don't have to put ourselves in a situation where our physical needs are not being met.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is that if you're lacking in any of those levels, you can go either way. You can say, I'm not going to move up and I'm not going to do anything more with myself.
Mhm.
Or you could say, how am I going to help myself to fulfill that need to get satisfaction at that level so that I can move on to the next level?
Yep.
And so these are just theories that we present to you because it's important to think about these things.
Mhm.
But then we always have a choice. God has always given us a choice of freedom to choose in any circumstance.
Mhm.
What is it? And I know that I also wanted to, where are we at? Also wanted to give a couple of scriptures because I know I get stuck sometimes in some of those, not feeling secure, not feeling loved, not feeling like I belong.
Mhm.
And so a couple of scriptures that I have to remind myself, because my tendency is to worry. So partially of that circle of control, I kind of doing it for myself because I'm going to use it. But scripture, reminding yourself of what is it that our minds need to be thinking in these situations, is also very important. Where was it?
Philippians 4.
It's Philippians 4.
Starting in verse 4.
And starting in verse 4, thank you, hon. Rejoice in the Lord. Always again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all people. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and pleading or supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. We will do another show about being thankful and grateful.
2 shows now?
But there's all kinds. We listen.
We'll
We
never
need,
run out of material.
all of
on
us
this
need
program.
help to get better at things.
Yeah.
And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Messiah. And finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is, oh, I love this one, because what verses 4 to 7 say to us is that if you have a need, then let God know. Just come to God for it.
Mhm.
But then the second one is choosing our attitude in times of need, which is, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if anything worthy of praise, think about those things. As for these things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So that's how, if we choose what our thoughts are going to be focused on, and this is why, like, the circle of control is, we can focus on the things we can do, and our attitude is a big one. And so if we choose to focus on the good things, then we will have that peace. And it doesn't matter whether our love and belonging needs are satisfied, we can keep working. How many people have succeeded not because they've had everything given to them, but because they've lacked something and they've been driven to go and achieve it.
Yep.
So that is one of the scriptures to encourage you today. And the other one is, it is Luke, is it 12?
Go down.
No, it is, yeah, this is Luke 12.
Verse 6.
Is
Or
it
4.
It's further down. So Luke 6, verse. Okay. I did have this. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, 22 verse. Okay, so Luke 12 verse 22. And he said to the disciples, for this reason I tell you, do not worry about your life as to what you're to eat, not for your body as to what you're to wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens, that they neither sow nor reap, they have no storeroom nor barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more valuable you are than the birds. And which of you, by worrying, can add a day to your lifespan? And so forth. So I encourage you to read these scriptures, because as we're talking about hierarchy of needs, I want you to remember that despite of what happens here in the physical world, us, by turning to God and reading our scriptures and really having that supernatural help can help us. And I think all of us who are connected to God can have that self-actualization more easily.
Well, that's God's desire and intent for us. And so, regardless of what, my God shall supply all of my needs according to his riches and glory. Yes. Your needs are going to be met if you trust in him. And the self-actualization is becoming all that he has intended for you to be. And even if some of those other levels are missing, that doesn't matter. You can still be what God has intended you to be through strength in him. And so we want to thank everybody once again for joining us. We've come to the end of our hour, and we will continue to provide you with life-transforming information that we hope that will help make your life more successful and help you to reach self-actualization.
Yes, absolutely. So make your needs known to God and pursue the purpose of your life, because God has a purpose for you.
Thanks very much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on lamnetwork.tv. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.